My name is Georgia. I am 31 years old, and most people would describe me as quiet, gentle, and easy to be around. I live in a small, comfortable house with my husband, Wilson, who is 35, and our 9-year-old son, Chester. From the outside, we look like a very happy family. Our home is warm, our routine is simple, and our marriage seems strong. Wilson is the kind of man everyone likes immediately. He is charming, friendly, and always the one who makes people laugh at parties. Neighbors admire him. Friends enjoy his company. Many people tell me I am lucky to have such a good husband. And for a long time, I believed that completely. We had a peaceful life together, filled with small everyday moments that felt safe and familiar. But recently, something inside me has changed. It began quietly, almost like a whisper I tried to ignore. A small fear I could not explain. I started noticing little details, things that did not match the man I thought I knew. Strange late nights. Answers that didn't sound right. A look in his eyes that felt different. I kept telling myself everything was fine, but deep in my heart, a quiet tension was growing. This is where my story begins, with a woman who thought she knew her husband better than anyone, and a life that seemed perfect, until the first cracks began to show. Georgia's days were simple and predictable. Most mornings, she woke up before everyone else, prepared breakfast, and got Chester ready for school. Afterward, she spent her time organizing the house, doing small chores, and working quietly from home on her part-time job. She liked the calm. She liked the feeling of caring for her family. Wilson worked in the city, often leaving early and returning late. He always said he was busy, that his company needed him, that long hours were just part of the job. Georgia believed him because she trusted him. In the evenings, they ate dinner together, talked a little about their day, and watched television while Chester played with his toys. It was peaceful, but over time, the conversations grew shorter. The silence grew longer. On weekends, the three of them stayed at home. They spent time in the garden, trimmed plants, or sat in the living room reading. Life looked steady and comfortable from the outside, and Georgia thought her love for Wilson was solid and unshakable. But slowly, small things began to bother her. Wilson started coming home late more often. She noticed mud on his shoes, even though he worked in an office. Sometimes he locked his study door or ended phone calls when she walked into the room. In the basement, she found strange old items Wilson said were just junk. She felt a faint worry rising inside her, but she pushed it away. She chose trust over doubt. Still, the quiet uncertainty continued to grow. The turning point came one quiet evening after dinner. Georgia was cleaning the kitchen while Wilson prepared to leave for a late meeting. As he lifted his briefcase, the handle slipped from his hand. The case hit the floor, flipped open, and papers scattered everywhere. Georgia bent down to help, and that was when she saw it. A newspaper article. A headline that made her stomach twist. Serial killer attacks again. Police still searching for suspect. Her eyes moved to the grainy photo printed beside the text. The suspect's face was blurred, but the features were unmistakable: dark hair, sharp jawline, the same height, the same posture. The face looked exactly like Wilson. For a moment, Georgia couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as she picked up the article. She told herself it was ridiculous. Impossible. Wilson wasn't violent. He wasn't cruel. He was a loving father, a hard-working husband, a man who made people laugh. But the doubt crept in quickly, loud and unstoppable. Suddenly the memories rushed back. The late nights he never explained. The dirty shoes after an office job. The strange objects hidden in the basement. The locked study door. The sudden anger whenever she asked a simple question. One by one, the pieces she had ignored finally connected. Fear threaded through every part of her mind. She felt dizzy, weak, and painfully aware that she no longer understood the man she lived with. From that night on, Georgia couldn't sleep. Each sound in the house made her jump. She watched Wilson more closely, his behavior, his movements, the way he checked his phone and quickly put it away when she came near. His calls became more frequent, and his voice turned sharp whenever she asked who he was talking to. She felt trapped between love and fear, unable to trust him but terrified of the truth she might uncover. One evening, when Wilson was out, Georgia gathered her courage and entered his study. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared the neighbors might hear it. She searched drawers, shelves, papers, nothing unusual at first. Just bills, documents, everyday things. Then she noticed a wooden box tucked behind a stack of folders. The moment she opened it, her entire world shattered. Inside were crime scene photos, more newspaper articles, handwritten notes describing the murders in chilling detail. Notes written in Wilson's handwriting. Before she could hide the box, she heard the front door open. Wilson was home. He saw her standing there, holding the evidence. His expression turned cold. And in that instant, Georgia knew. Her worst fear was real. From the moment Georgia saw Wilson's cold expression in the doorway, her world collapsed. The man standing in front of her was no longer the husband she had loved for 12 years. He was a stranger, someone whose secrets wrapped around the house like invisible chains. She felt her pulse hammering in her ears as she struggled to breathe. Wilson stepped closer, and Georgia instinctively stepped back. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," he said quietly. Too quietly. Every part of her body screamed danger. She felt the walls closing in. Her thoughts spiraled wildly. Is my husband a killer? Should I run? How do I protect my son? How can I love someone who terrifies me? Her heart ached with the memory of the man he once was. The man who held her when she cried. The man who made Chester laugh. But standing here now, his eyes empty and sharp, she knew that man no longer existed, if he ever had. Wilson asked her again what she had seen. His voice sounded calm, but she could hear something darker underneath it. Something threatening. Georgia forced herself not to show fear. She whispered, "You need help." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand," he said. "I had reasons." But Georgia didn't want to hear his reasons. Not anymore. That night, while Wilson went to shower, she made her decision. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she picked up her phone. She dialed the police, whispering into the receiver, "My husband is involved in the murders. Please come quickly." The moment the words left her mouth, she heard the bathroom door open. Wilson stepped into the hallway. His eyes landed on the phone in her hand. His face darkened with sudden rage. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Georgia ran. She slipped away from his grasp, darting into the kitchen, heart pounding so violently she thought she might faint. Wilson reached for her again, but she twisted out of his reach and yelled into the phone, "Hurry, please." Seconds later, the distant sound of sirens echoed through the neighborhood. Wilson froze. His expression shifted from anger to something unreadable. But he didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He only stared at her with cold disappointment, as if she had betrayed him, not the other way around. When the police finally burst into the house and handcuffed him, Georgia stood motionless. Unable to cry. Unable to speak. She watched the man she once believed was good, being taken away from her forever. It was the moment everything broke, the moment fear, love, and devastation collided inside her and left her standing in the ruins of the life she thought she knew. The weeks that followed Wilson's arrest were a blur of interviews, statements, police visits, and painful truths. Georgia cooperated fully with the investigation. She handed over the box of evidence, the articles, the photos, and the notes written in Wilson's own handwriting. Each piece confirmed what she already knew deep in her heart. Wilson was charged and later sentenced to life in prison. When the final verdict was read in the courtroom, Georgia felt her knees weaken. Not from sadness, though there was sadness, but from the release of a fear she had carried silently for months. The man she once trusted with her entire life had become a threat she could no longer ignore. She knew she couldn't stay in the same house, on the same street, surrounded by memories that now felt poisoned. So she moved with Chester to a quiet town 2 hours away. A place where nobody knew her story. A place where she could begin again. She found a small job at a local shop. She met new neighbors, gentle and friendly. She made friends who slowly helped her reconnect with the world outside of fear. Chester enrolled in a new school and began to smile again. One afternoon, months later, Georgia gathered the courage to visit Wilson in prison, not to forgive him, but to close the last door between her past and her future. When she saw him through the glass, his eyes were cold, emotionless. There was no regret, no softness, no trace of the husband she once adored. She realized then that she did the right thing. As she walked away from the prison, the air felt different, lighter, though painful. She wasn't fully happy yet, but she was free. And freedom, even when it hurts, is the beginning of strength, healing, and the possibility of a life built on truth. In the quiet of her new home, Georgia begins to reflect on everything she lived through. The fear, the confusion, the heartbreak, it all shaped her into someone stronger than she ever imagined. She thinks back to the woman she used to be, someone who trusted too easily, someone who silenced her instincts because she wanted her life to stay perfect. "Now I understand that love cannot blind you from the truth," she whispers to herself. She realizes that love, when healthy, brings peace, not fear. But love mixed with denial can become dangerous. Sometimes the person you love the most can hide the darkest secrets, she continues. And that truth, though painful, saved her life. Georgia learned that courage isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always look like shouting or fighting. Sometimes courage is quiet. It is the trembling decision to pick up a phone and ask for help. It is the strength to walk away from danger even when your heart breaks. It is choosing your safety over your loyalty. She learned powerful lessons. Never silence your instincts. Never ignore red flags. Never trade your safety for love. Because silence and denial can destroy you. But facing the truth, even when it hurts, can save your life. The story ends softly, with Georgia standing stronger, wiser, and finally safe. Her peace is not perfect, but it is real. And for the first time in a long time, her future feels like her own. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for learning English through stories with us, and stay tuned for more meaningful lessons.